We don't know how many scientists or engineers or doctors or generals or police officers or educators that we have there. But we will never know, because those young people will never be able to exercise all of the intellectual capabilities that they have. Today, in my view, when we think about public education, we can no longer just think about first grade through 12th grade. That was a great development for many, many years. But today, as many of you know, a college degree is the equivalent in many respects to what a high school degree was 50 or 60 years ago. 50 years ago, you had a high school degree, you were in pretty good shape. You go out and get a good job. Not the case today. That is why I believe that we should make public colleges and universities tuition free. Is this a radical idea? No, it really is not a radical idea. It exists. How much does college tuition in Germany cost? Anyone know? Free. I was speaking to a group last year, and I said, well, in Scandinavia, college is free. And some guy jumps up, he says, no, you're wrong, I'm from Finland. I said, am I wrong? I didn't know that. He said, no, they pay us to go to college. But what sensible policy is about, and just think about it, we want the best educated population in the world, do we not? Right. And then the other part of this equation, which is equally crazy, part of the same deal, is the issue of student debt. How many of you are going to graduate school or are in student debt already? Okay. Now, I have talked to people all over this country. I always ask this question. I've talked to a dentist, woman graduated dental school in Iowa, $400,000 in debt. A young doctor in Burlington, Vermont, $300,000 in debt. A kid who went to college for 2 years in Iowa, left school, $60,000 in debt. So I want you, when you think outside of the box, think education is a good thing. We want to encourage people to get as much education as they believe they need. We should not be punishing people for getting a good education. There are people who have been paying off their student loans for decades. I talked to a guy in Nevada, 55 years of age. He's been paying off his student debt for 25 years. He's more in debt today than he was when he started. That is crazy stuff. You should be encouraged to get all the education you need, not punished for doing that. And that is why I believe, and we've got legislation in to do this, that will give people who have student debt the ability to refinance that debt at the lowest interest rates they can find. Substantially low. And what that means when we open up public education, colleges and universities, you know what that means to poor kids all over this country? What it means to kids like my own family, my parents never went to college. It says that if you do your schoolwork, regardless of the income of your family, regardless of the color of your skin, you will be able to get a higher education. That's a pretty revolutionary step forward. All right. Erica Garner was kind enough to introduce me, and I want to say a word or two about a broken criminal justice system. And I want to talk about it within a couple of contexts. Context number one. What theoretically our nation is about is equal justice under the law. That's a pretty profound concept, It says that if you're poor, if you're rich, if you break the law, you're going to pay the price no matter what your income, no matter what your status in society is about. Let me tell you a brief story. Some of you may have read, although it didn't get a whole lot of media attention, about 3 weeks ago or so, Goldman Sachs, one of the large financial institutions on Wall Street, reached a settlement with the United States government to pay $5 billion. $5 billion. And they reached that settlement because Goldman Sachs, one of the financial institutions that helped bring about the financial disaster that occurred in 2008. They were selling subprime mortgage packages which were worthless and defrauded investors and the American people. So they paid a settlement for $5 billion. Now, when we think about criminal justice, think about this. Today in South Carolina, or in Vermont, some kid gets picked up with a small amount of marijuana. That kid will have a police record. And yet, the executives on Wall Street, whose greed and illegal behavior drove this country into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Millions of people lost their jobs, their homes, their life savings. Do you know how many executives on Wall Street will have police records? Anyone know?
Zero.
That's right. 0. That is not equal justice under the law. So together, we're going to once again allow people to have faith in our criminal justice system. And that means that if you are rich or whether you're poor, if you break the law, you will be treated equally under our criminal justice system. Now, let me speak a little bit more about criminal justice. It is an international embarrassment that we have more people in jail than any other country. We have got to ask ourselves why, and we have got to ask ourselves what we can do about it. Now, here are some of the things that I think we can do about it. For a start, we are tired, I am tired, of seeing videos, the videos of Erica's dad, and other videos of unarmed people being killed by police officers. Now, I was a mayor of a city for 8 years, and I worked closely with the police department. And in my view, the vast majority of police officers in this country are honest, hardworking, and they have a very difficult job in front of them. But when a police officer breaks the law, like any other public official, that police officer must be held accountable. End of discussion. Now, I think some people, especially young people, they say, you know, it's a terrible thing what I saw on TV and what I saw happen to Erica's dad and happened to so many other people. But it must be a new phenomenon. You know, I don't know what's going on. Why is it happening now? Understand that what's going on now, especially with regard to African Americans, this is not new. It has been going on decade after decade after decade. The only difference is the cell phone video. That's the only difference. Because what was going on in the past was never recorded. And the police officer's testimony was accepted as truth. But this video, this cell phone, makes all the difference in the world. So clearly, as a nation, we need criminal justice reform. I know it doesn't seem like a radical idea, but we have got to achieve the day when young black males and women can walk the streets without worrying about being harassed by a police officer. I have talked to African American PhDs who get nervous when they have to drive across the country. It should not be happening in the year 2016. So what we are going to do is, number one, do a lot of training for police departments around our country. We're going to hold police officers accountable. Number two, we all have got to understand that lethal force should be the last response, not the first response. Police officers have got to learn to deal with disturbances, which are not so easy to deal with. Don't suggest they are. But there are ways to deal with them without using lethal force. There are ways to deal with people. We have seen people who are clearly mentally ill. It's happened in my own state of Vermont. This guy has a knife. This guy is, mentally ill. You don't have to kill somebody when they're mentally ill. There are ways of apprehending that person without killing them. What we have got to do is rethink local police departments in terms of making sure that police departments look like the diversity of the communities they are serving. We have got to demilitarize local police departments so they do not look like occupying armies. Our goal is to have police departments that are part of the community, that are trusted by the people in the community, that are there to protect the people in the community, not to act as an oppressive outside force. And we can do that. It's not that radical. And when we talk about reform, what we also have got to deal with is ending mandatory minimum sentencing. We have got to understand that drug addiction and substance abuse is a health issue, not a criminal justice. One of the issues that I frankly did not know all that much about, I kind of got involved in since I have been running for office, deals with marijuana. And here is the truth. Over the last 20, 30 years, millions of Americans have received police records for possession of marijuana.
Yes, sir.
And if you get a police record for possession, it makes it a little bit harder to go out and get a job. Your future employer says, well, tell me about yourself. Ever been arrested? Well, yeah, I was picked up with marijuana. Well, I got somebody else waiting online for the job. Okay? Today, marijuana is listed in the federal government's Controlled Substance Act, a list of harmful drugs, is listed as a Schedule I drug right next to heroin. Does that make sense to anybody?
No!
All right, so what we are going to do, if I have anything to say about it, is take marijuana out of the Controlled Substance Act. Should not be a federal crime. States have the right to legalize marijuana or not. It's a state issue. 4 states have done it. D.C. has done it. But it should not be, in my view, a federal crime. When we talk about our criminal justice system, what we have also got to understand, and this is really quite incredible, is that many people who have been arrested as felons no longer have the right to vote. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, that's wrong. I mean, people who have done something wrong, broken the law, go to jail, they pay their price. They pay they give back to society. They pay for what they have done. It does not seem right to me to take away their right to participate in democratic society. They paid their dues. So I think we are going to end that a policy which says that if you are a felon, you should not have the right to vote. I think that that's wrong. I think what also we have got to do is deal with this very high rate of recidivism. And that means that when people are arrested, too often they end up, after being released, getting back into jail again. And that means that we've got to create jobs for those people, give them job training, give them education, and make sure they do not get caught up in the same environment which got them into jail in the first place. So count me in as somebody who, if elected president, will help lead this country in the fight against institutional racism and a broken criminal justice system. We have a lot of work to do in that regard. No question about it, but I think we can accomplish that goal. Okay? A couple of other points I want to make. I'll stop, and if you want to ask some questions, let's do it. In terms of our position in the world, there is only one nation that does not guarantee health care to all people, and that is the United States of America. I happen to believe, and I've always believed, that health care is a right of all people, not just a privilege. And that we have got to move toward a Medicare for all single-payer program. All right, let me conclude by just saying this. Change never comes about easily. Real change never comes from the top on down. Real change, whether it is the rights of working people, civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, whatever it may be, always comes from the bottom on up. It comes when millions of people say that the status quo is no longer acceptable, that racism or sexism or homophobia is just not what this country is about, and people stand up and they say, no, we're not going to tolerate it anymore, and change comes about. And in many ways, over the last number of decades, we have made good progress in becoming a less discriminatory society. But in terms of economics, in terms of income and wealth inequality, in terms of low wages, in terms of millions of people not having health insurance, in terms of millions of our people leaving school deeply in debt, we have a long, long way to go. So this afternoon, I ask you to join with me and help us make a political revolution. Help us not just elect a new president, but help us transform this country and make our great nation the kind of country we all know that we can become. Thank you all very much. Thank you all for being here. We've got time for a few questions. I don't know, do we have a mic? Shannon has a mic? Is that the only mic, Shannon? All right, just run up the aisle, duck underneath there, and if you have a question, raise your hand. I see a couple of folks.
Test.
Okay, right up here. Yes, sir.
Hello, Senator.
Hi.
With the free education plan, when you're raising taxes, what incentivizes colleges to not raise their tuition with this federal money?
Yeah, okay, well, first of all, it's not free college education. What it is, free tuition at public colleges and universities. And within that legislation, that's a good question, there is guidelines to prevent colleges from simply raising tuition higher and higher. That's a very serious problem. I mean, the answer is we are cognizant of that. But the goal here is to say that in America, everybody should have the opportunity to get that higher education, regardless of the income of their families. We're not going to just give money to colleges to see them raise expenses. Yeah, you got somebody there?
What do you say to the notion that the Wall Street speculation tax will negatively affect the economy and the market volatility?
No, I think it will do it. What we're going to do is pay for free tuition at public colleges and universities and lower student debt through a tax on Wall Street speculation. I think what most economists will tell you, in fact, it will establish less volatility by lessening speculation. Speculation is not a positive thing. It's ups and downs and ups and downs. And to the degree that we can lessen that, not only do we raise substantial amounts of revenue, but we also lower that kind of volatility. Okay, Shannon, where are you? Okay, got a question?
Hello, Senator Sanders, big fan. I was wondering if you think it would be a good idea for the students to live out of state, they go to college, let's say they live in California and they go to school in South Carolina, if the colleges should set up a sort of a voting booth so that they could have their voice heard in
Well, students, have to make a decision as to where they want to vote. And some will choose to vote in the state in which they are in schools. Others will choose to vote in their home state. That is their decision. But this is what I will say, is that we should not discriminate against students. What we're seeing around the country is efforts to make it harder for college students to vote. That is wrong. So we should make it easier for students to vote and participate. Whether or not they want to vote in the state in which they are at school or their home state is their decision. Yep.
Hi, Senator Sanders. I did my undergrad at Virginia Tech, so I want to know what are your ideas about gun violence?
Thank you very much. And we're all familiar with the tragedy at Virginia Tech and the tragedy in many other parts of the country. So let me begin by telling you that way back when, in 1988, when I first ran for office, I ran as an independent against a Democrat and a Republican in that election. I lost by 3 points. In that election, one candidate, me, stood up to the gun lobby and said, you know what, I don't think it's a good idea that we should be selling military weapons, military assault weapons designed to kill people very rapidly. That's what I did back in 1988. I lost that election by 3 points. I held that position. I won 2 years later. Throughout my career, I have believed in a strong instant background check, which says if you want to purchase a weapon, you've got to go through an instant background check. If you have a criminal background or if you have mental instability, you are not and you should not get that weapon. Right now, there is a major gun loophole called the gun show loophole that President Obama is attempting to address through executive orders. What the gun show loophole is about is you can legally purchase a gun at a gun show or on the internet, and you don't have, if you're going through a person who's not a licensed gun dealer. We want to eliminate that loophole. We want to deal with right now what we call the straw man. The straw man situation is you walk into a gun store, legally purchase some guns, and you go out and you sell them to criminals. That should be a federal crime. And the other issue that we want to deal with, in my view, is mental health. Let us be honest and acknowledge that we have a mental health crisis in this country. There are many people walking the streets of America today who are suicidal and or homicidal. They need treatment when they need treatment, which is today, not 2 months from today. So we need to revolutionize access. Thank you for your question, and count me in as someone who will do everything he can as president to make sure that guns do not fall into the hands of people who don't have them. Erica, do you want to?
Yes, Mr. Sanders, thank you for calling on me.
Yeah. You're a special guest.
I just wanted to ask, can you tell everyone why it's important for the youth and minorities to be involved in this political process?
Yes. Thank you for that. That is the most important question. Look, I know, that's no secret, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, that if you go back to your dorms, your classes today, and you talk to your friends, and somebody says, well, what'd you do this afternoon? Well, I went to hear Bernie Sanders speak. Well, who the hell is Bernie Sanders? And why were you wasting your time going to some political meeting? What's the matter with you? Don't you got other things to do with your life? And I want you to look your friends in the eye. And this is, I understand that. Look, I understand that is what a lot of people your age think. They think politics is nonsense. Maybe they think everybody's a crook or a jerk or worse. Why do you want to get involved? But here's what I think where Eric is coming from. If you do not get involved, if you do not exercise your right to vote, what do you think happens to the issues that you are concerned about? Who hears you?
No one.
All right, significant number of you raised your hands that you're going to leave school deeply in debt, right? Who cares about you if not you? If you do not make that point to Washington and say, you know what, it's a little bit crazy that I have to go to college and come out of school $60,000 or $100,000 a day. Do anybody in Washington is worried about you? They're not. You got to tell them what's going on, and then you got to take it a step further. You got to say, if you guys do not start listening to my issues, whether it is college debt, whether it is the need to get a decent job, whether it is climate change, whether it is healthcare, whether it is criminal justice, and whether you want to continue living in a country where we have more people in jail than any other. No one is going to pay attention to those issues if you do not forcefully stand up and fight for them. So when your friends tell you you must be nuts to go to a political meeting, you ask them whether or not they're worried about student debt, whether they're worried about health care, whether they're worried about climate change, whether they're worried about criminal justice, whether they're worried about women's rights, whether they're worried about gay rights. And if they are worried about them, you tell them that you're not the dummies here. They are. They have got to get it right.
Hi, Senator. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
My question is, do you feel like the United States should step up and take responsibility in leading the global efforts to combat climate change?
Excellent question. All right. Thank you for the question. As I may have mentioned, you may know, I am a member of the Senate Environmental Committee and the Energy Committee. And I know that there are a lot of Republicans who are running around this state who tell you that climate change is a hoax or that there is nothing that they can do about it. They are wrong. They are wrong big time. Let me tell you something else, because I've talked to a lot of scientists around the world. And what they say is if we don't get our act together, this planet by the end of the century could be 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than it is today. You know what that means? It means more drought, more floods. Funding from the Koch brothers, the fossil fuel industry, ExxonMobil, the coal companies, and all these guys who are more concerned about short-term profits than they are about the future of the planet. That shows you what a corrupt campaign finance system does. All right, maybe just one more question. Yeah.
Hi, Senator Sanders. Do you think that it's important to promote social equality in schools in regions in the South and other areas where there may not be as great of an awareness about racism and gay issues and stuff like that?
Absolutely. Look, as a nation, God, have we struggled with racism from day one. From the abomination of slavery, segregation, denial of the people to vote. I'll tell you a story, and I keep telling it because it just stays in my heart. And a lot of people don't know that. Maybe some of you do. I was in Birmingham, Alabama, a month ago. And I went to the church. Are all of you familiar with that church, 16th Street Church, where 4 children were murdered when a bomb exploded there? On that month, that whole month, there were 14 bombings in Birmingham, Alabama. Do you all know that? 14 bombings in one city in 1 month. What does that mean? It means that that city was essentially controlled by terrorists. By terrorists who were trying to bring fear into the part of the African American community who was standing up for voting rights and for civil rights. That was going on in America in the 1960s. So we have come a long way, but it is clear to everybody that we still have a long, long way to go. What we must not fall prey to, and let me just say this to you, what history is always about. If I'm on the top, what is the thing, and I have all the money and all the power, what is the thing that I want to prevent happening? What I want to prevent happening is people coming together, all right? I want to see people divided up. Back in the 1950s, a long time ago, the lowest paid white workers in America were in Mississippi. Probably South Carolina wasn't that far behind. Lowest paid white workers, making nothing, making peanuts. What did they have psychologically while they were earning no wages at all? What did they have? They had racism. What does that mean? What did it mean? Exactly. It meant to say, all right, we didn't have any money. All right. He was fast. This is what it meant. What it meant is, yeah, I don't have any money. I can't afford to send my kids to college. I don't have any health care. But you know what? I could drink at that damn water fountain, and that black guy can't. I'm superior. Whoa-wee! That's great. No education, no health care, no decent jobs. I could drink at that water fountain. Those things weren't accidents. Same thing, men oppressing women. Straights versus gays. We divide. Now what you're seeing is people like Donald Trump telling us that Mexicans are rapists, they're criminals, they're drug dealers, that we got to build a wall and keep Muslims from coming into this country. Divide us up. What this campaign is about, and what progress throughout American history has been about, is just the opposite. It is bringing us together, black and white and Latino and Mexican. Remember what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I'm paraphrasing him here, said, we judge people not by the color of their skin, not by the country they came from, not by the clothing that they wear, but by their character as human beings. And at the end of the day, you know what? We are all human beings. And we all have the same needs and the same desires. We all love our children, and we love our parents, and we love our families, and we want everybody to do well. Do not let them divide us up. Stand together, think big, and create the nation that we all know we can become. Thanks all very much.